Yes, friends. Now let's continue with supportive lights. Supportive lights from the exterior are done like this. Normally, you need to use these a lot in D5, friends, because D5 is a render engine that, by its nature, loves lights, friends. And while doing this, as I always say, it's necessary to support from the exterior with these supportive lights here. I took the rectangle light. I added one here, friends. Look, this is how its size came. But look, my window's long like this. First, let's rotate this with rotate like this. Look, let's bring this to 90 degrees, friends. I reached 90 degrees. I made it vertical, and I placed it in front of the window. Let it stay in front of the window like this. But the window is big. This turned out small. Look, it has sizes. The X value, I enlarged it upwards from the X value. I placed it here like this. But its thickness also became large, because I want to place one on each window. I also reduced the whites on this part. I narrowed it. I brought it like this, and I adjusted it, friends. As you can see, like this. We brought it in front of a window. I moved it a bit closer, as you can see, and it gave an illumination inward. The internet says 30, but I will start from 100 because I want it to spread inward. Friends, I set it to 100. Now look, I will go inside. It will have a little effect. Look, normally, I have a setting like this. It was also in our spotlights. The value of 5,000 shows where this rectangular light will affect. So it ends here, friends. The value of 5,000 actually means 5 meters. I'm enlarging this quite a bit, friends. I set it to a value of 15,000 all the way to the bottom. Look, normally these areas weren't clear, but now they are. Now I'm going to set it to 5. Let me change this back to 5,000. Look, it's not clear, friends, but when I took it last, it was a very clear image. I'm facing it. Of course, my exposure value is open. Don't forget that part. We will close that part, friends. I came here. I duplicated it here again with Shift. It will take the same settings here again. 115,000 value, friends. I duplicated it here again with Shift. Let's go back to scene 4. Look, when I come to scene 4, you will see the illumination in scene 4. I turned off auto from the effects section. Friends, do you see? What happened with the rectangle light? A naturalness occurred in my scene. I also turned off the exposure. My scene actually illuminates naturally like this. Of course, in scene 4. Since I didn't adjust and update the azimuth value in the Evermind section here, these values have taken my old values. Friends, let it come like this. The value here was 1. This is the 0.1 value. We can increase this light operation a little bit. The sun value is around 0.8. Let it come like this from here. We can turn its direction a bit more towards the bed, like this, when we do it this way. If I say update from here, it will now be updated, meaning it will save the settings here. See, normally, natural light is provided like this, friends. We are currently illuminating with natural light. Of course, we also need to provide supportive light to the lights here. Friends, that is also the same rectangle light. We need to add a light source up to here along the length of this light. I took the rectangle light, clicked here, and placed it here. Friends, see the direction is facing downwards. Rotate. This to show the direction of this phone towards this side and reduce the value in the X direction upwards and the value in the Y direction significantly. Friends, let it be something very thin because we will make a supportive light for the light here. Look, let it come here and stay here. Let it come like this. Let's even see the lighting person over there. And this, look, extend it upwards like this. Friends, let it extend downwards and upwards. Let's do it upwards like this. It could be like this. As you can see, I'm increasing the value by 5,000 again. Friends, I placed it here. As you can see, I will put it here again and I will rotate its roti value like this. Look, the effect. If I hit it too hard, it becomes very visible. But when I put it inside like this, it doesn't show. Look, it would be nice if you add the appearance of light in such an effect. In such a situation, we have placed these as supportive elements for impressive lighting. Friends, as you can see, we have achieved natural lighting in this way. Of course, are these sufficient for us? Are they sufficient, friends? We can also add light sources from here and from the ceiling. If we add these, it will look nicer. And look here, the light source appears a bit dim. I mean, the LEDs appear a bit dim, friends. Let's go up over here. I am lightly pressing the light source, the whites, friends. I will change these from 10 to 20. Let it provide a bit more light here. Let's turn around like this again. And from here, look, normally when I open the exposure in the effects section, it was giving a meaningless light and preventing the details from being visible. It doesn't give such a natural look, friends. Right now, because it gives such a natural look, we achieved a nice effect. Of course, the inconsistency in the coatings still requires a bit more quality from us, actually. The scene is saying it needs quality, friends. You see an explosion here. If you pay attention, look, there is a setting called highlight exposure. In the effects section, friends, look at this part. Normally my setting is 0, right? This part was 0. Look at this part. You can lower and reduce it. Did you see? When you lower it, some exposure is lost, but you can adjust a lot by playing with these. Let's increase the contrast a bit like this. The shadow section opens the light in the shadows. Friends, with a setting like this. With the white balance here, you can change the light intensity. Normally, a value of 500 is ideal. Friends, I created a second by pressing the plus sign again. These scenes are my transition scenes, settings, adjusted scenes. Friends, you can take a render frame from here again. I will show you how to take it in between, but right now, we are getting to the consistency, friends. We gave light from the windows here. You can do something like this if you want. Look, now I will show you something like this. Now I gave 3 from here. The light was not sufficient. For example, let's not come short. For instance, we looked here. Of course, we will place a TV, accessories, friends. Let's say there is still a dim light. Something like this can be done here. For example, I gave an extra light from outside. I select these with control. Friends, look, I selected all of them. Like this. I also give additional light from inside to the light I provided from outside. In this way, I achieve a certain amount of light. Look. But, of course, for the amount of light here, I reduce these to an intensity of 30. Friends. The ones outside are at 100, the ones inside are at 30. You can experience such an illumination, or you can lower these significantly and make them 10. This is how an event occurs, friends. Look, when I select the light at the back, it's at 100. And when I select the light at the front, it will be at a strength of 10. And this helps us as a supportive light. Friends, is there too much? There isn't too much. If you think it's too much in terms of effect here, then if you go to the back, you can reduce the intensity of the light that's at 100. Friends, but for now, I don't think the light is too much. But since we will be adjusting contrast and light settings, the current amount of light is sufficient. Look, the amount of light here looks quite nice, friends. From here, you can also use the rectangle light as a supportive element from the ceiling or other parts. Friends, in our current situation, we have used supportive lights from the inside. Of course, since we will also be adding lights from the top and bottom, we still have a bit more work to do.